Chapter 2: Weird Events and Suspicious Activity. In the morning I asked Brian, "Is it okay if we leave you another day while we do stuff for the documentary?" Nature's a good place to be. He didn't answer the question directly. I could tell he was reluctant to. He didn't take the snacks I bought, but welcomed the water. Eli and I got into the car and drove to Matt's American parents. Eli wanted to stop by his place to get a shower and a change of clothes, something he rarely did. While he was doing that, I drove to Matt's. He insisted, "Let's go to Walmart." "Why?" "I have to get GoPro." I took him even though this didn't seem like a great idea. When there, he bought the little camera.
I doubted it would be of any use for the documentary.
He insisted we get it because the camera would be excellent for our trip. He had a sticker that he put on my car and attached the camera to it, then told me to drive down some back roads to get shoots of the woods. He still fumbled with the words sometimes, but I didn't make fun of him or try to correct him. When we got back to his place, he couldn't remove the sticker. He took the camera off, seeming a little upset that he couldn't use it again. I was agitated that he was upset about the sticker mount more than the damage he did to a friend's car. You ready to see John Creedler?" "No. We were supposed to film today." "I made other plans. I'm going to meet with friends." This guy didn't have any friends in America except me. The chance of on him they'd cancel on him or never show up. His friends were my friends, and I knew them well enough to understand they'd say they'd meet him so that he'd get excited and then not show. That way he'd wait for nothing. They'd enjoy laughing about how he was some stupid Polish kid who believed he was American just because he ate McDonald's and played football in high school. Back then, even my friends in their mid-20s made fun of them, which surprised me because I had imagined people in their 20s to be more mature. Upset, I asked, "When will we record then? I already made arrangements to meet John." "You can today." He passed his GoPro towards me in the travel case. "Use this. It's a 16mm and it doesn't have a good mic." He ignored me and walked to the place he was staying. Frustrated, I left to get Eli. We arrived at the destination, and John, who had founded Earth Tribe Trust, a school, which was really a camp for the homeless, had gone missing. The founder of the whole place was nowhere to be seen or heard from. Matt had remained back in Middlesboro, Kentucky, to try to meet with people who would never show up and they had agreed to. So he sat alone messaging people on Facebook while Eli and I were in Irvine, Kentucky, trying to find John Creedler. Chapter 2, Break 2. John was brilliant, but a car wreck had made him into a ranting lunatic. If he consumed large amounts of he'd become relaxed enough to hold a coherent conversation. When off the stuff, he'd pace back and forth, yelling at everyone. He was constantly saying he was the janitor of this operation, because he wasn't put together enough to have a full organization. Sometimes he'd disappear for a few days, went off to help a neighbor, but he'd always return. The place was in shambles. There was a building made of tires and clay. The roof was made of logs that had not been treated, but the people living there had packed the lumber with mud, a substance that would certainly retain moisture and rot the timber roof. This tire building was across from the kitchen. The structure was a few poles erected and covered in tarps. The oven was a clay stove. The bathroom was 2 tarps wrapped around each other, one over the top. The toilet was a bucket, and when it was full, people took turns dumping it into a compost pile. Since most never dumped it when it was full, John would do it and yelled at everyone for not dealing with. He said it was both literal and metaphorical. This was a perfect example of a disorganization. John's farm was the first tier of what happens when hippies get together and try to start a farm using egalitarian ideals. The society completely fails. Without incentives such as money or extra food, there usually is only one or two people working while everyone else reaps the rewards. John's farm was a perfect example of this. Eli and I got the camera out and we recorded a few men in the process of erecting an A-frame hut. The men had dug a ditch in a V shape. On each side were fallen trees and branches, and the branches had been removed and the bark had been trimmed off. This was going to be someone's home. It was sized enough for one person to put a sleeping bag in there, perhaps an instrument and a jug of water. That was all they would have. It was terrible design for long-term dwelling unless a person didn't mind freezing to death in the winter. When considering all of John's building plans and designs, this was not on a list of things his school taught. What he wanted was permaculture, a culture of self-renewing economy and environmental stability, not wasteful cutting and disposal. He kept talking about making stone buildings with rocket stoves and solar panels. When confronted about the buildings, they all looked indignant. It was as if this were their home and always had been. Obviously, they didn't know John well. Something weird was going on. Where's John? They acted like they didn't know who I was talking about. There were always new people at John's. Nobody stayed long because of his mental instability. He criticized everyone for not doing things well. These people were no exception. When walking around without the camera, I asked the guy who looked most confident in himself, "Did John say where he's going?" "No." "Can you give me a time and day when he left?" "Some time ago." They did not know John then. Yet they behaved as if they were ignorant. This would make interviews for the documentary nearly impossible. There was no established report, and they refused to listen to me. That refusal meant they would not understand I had known John far longer than they did, and they'd soon be driven away by his madness. I asked the others, since they heard the guy's knowledge of John's existence, do you know where John is?" Like people lost in a K-hole, they stared at me blankly. But there was no pleasure or positive expression in their gaze. They had no confidence in themselves or the situation. They must have been there for 2 weeks maximum. It was common for John to find homeless people at rainbow gatherings and bring them to his farm while they were high on acid. They thought he was going to revolutionize the world, to undo the world's pollution, and they'd learn all of this at his school. John didn't know, and these people didn't know. They were unorganized people living. John didn't know, and these people didn't know John didn't know. They were just unorganized people living in the woods with a small book on survival. My friend Brian knew more than they did about reversing climate change. He worked on a project that unpolluted an entire lake. He literally brought life to a dead spot on Earth. Unlike Brian, these people would give up their homes and they'd hitchhike and bum their lives away. Brian's fear showed he still had hope. He believed the world was going to be destroyed, which motivated him to fight for survival, to try to motivate others to whatever noble cause was on his mind. I didn't want to arrive and get no footage, so Eli and I got some shots of them doing illegal construction. We tried to do interviews, but were met with the vacant eyes and dead minds of these people. The term deadhead had several meanings when it came to hippies. Since I was hungry and the darkness was coming, I kept thinking of Matt calling me un American for not eating McDonald's. I asked Eli, "You want to go to town to get some food? I'll pay." "Sure, man. No need to pay, though." "It's no problem. Thanks for the help." "Thanks for the wild car ride." But I got money in my wallet. For some reason, Eli didn't have a bank or credit card. I never questioned why. I think it had something to do with his paranoia about being tracked by the government. Though from all the years I knew him, he wasn't doing anything illegal except when he never bought it. People just gave it to him. He was just a friendly person, so people wanted him around to experience being euphoric about something. His presence was like a catalyst for a higher bliss. I don't understand it, but I witnessed over 20 people ask him if he was an angel or Jesus. It was insane, but I'm certain he could start a cult if he wanted. As we drove away, I thought if Eli lived there, he could probably take over that whole operation and have worshippers. How empty eyed those people were. I guess any little bit of human affection would fill them and make them compelled to please him, especially if they felt accepted with no judgment. In the town of Irvine, Kentucky, I parked my car in a near empty McDonald's parking lot. As we began walking into the restaurant, a man with a gun yelled, "Is one of you Mark Canfield?" I looked at the dark SUV with government plates. "Yes." "Put your hands in the air where I can see them." Eli and I put our hands up. I had no idea what was going on. I had a strong suspicion it had something to do with John having gone missing. A large man stepped out of the vehicle and put a gun to my face. Then to Eli, he said, "Don't move or I'll shoot." My heart pounded in my chest. His other hand went to his sports coat. He moved it aside to show a detective badge of some kind. "Are you the one from John Creedler's?" "How did you know?" "I'm the one that's going to be asking questions." "Yes, sir," I said, not knowing who he was. The man said, "I don't want to see you here anymore. I don't care what you're doing or what you think you're doing. I don't want you near John or anything that has to do with him." "What about keep your mouth closed, boy? I don't want you in Irvine. Got it?" "Yes, sir." "Now, let's pretend this never happened. Can you tell me what you're in town for?" Eli said, "We're just going to get some McDonald's." "Great," he said with a smile. The man put his shoulder strap hidden under his suit jacket. "What'll it be?" "A cheeseburger," Eli said. "I'll get you a whole meal, you know. That's all." "You?" I, his hands were crossed against his chest, but he was smiling like we were friends, as if he just saw us walking by and wanted to have a roadside picnic. "I'll just have a large thing of fries." "You sure that's all you want?" "Yeah, that's all. Thank you, sir." "Okay, I'll be right back." I put my hands down and the man said, "Sit. Don't move from that spot. I'll have my eye on you. I'm not the only one either." I sat, as instructed. Eli and I were mostly silent. I asked, "How do you think he knows me?" "I don't know." I wondered if it had to do with my Facebook post. There had been a few about where I was. Often, when I went to a new place, I'd post photos of myself there. There would also be a brief description of what it was like. My goal was to encourage people to learn more about places they may not otherwise see or hear about. The undercover returned with the food. He said, "Enjoy your meal. Please, don't think I'm a bad guy. I'm just doing my job. I just want you to know that, okay?" I nodded, and then he got back in the black SUV. Then he got into a black SUV with government plates and drove away. The pounding of my heart was going back to normal. My fries were pure grease and salt. My stomach turned with them in my mouth. I decided never to eat at McDonald's again after that experience. Eli muttered, "That's the top 10 weirdest things that ever happened to me." "Same," I sighed. I mean, one moment the guy has a gun to my head, and the next he buys me a dinner. I don't know if I should thank him or hate him.